Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Freisen. I'm presenting on what I did this past semester and what I plan to do in this coming semester. This last time, a year ago, I was before you and I was presenting on what I was going to be doing for the coming year. I was doing it with excitement and trepidation. Well, I pulled the last year's speech up and I wanted to check it out to see what's happened the past year. 1 year ago, I was starting on a voyage. I started the voyage with the crew. I had training camp, I had cross purpose, I had the fellowship behind me. I had training from the fellowship. I had a flight manifest, which was my role, what I planned to be doing in training camp, my PDP, my expectations, and I also had an end in sight. Or at least it was the only end that I could possibly see at the time as being my objective. And that was to teach and create curriculum and teach computers for 4 training camps in 2016. At the time, it seemed like a trip to the moon. I didn't have teaching experience. I did not have experience creating curriculum. It was new to me. It was a big, hairy voyage. Jump forward now to September, and I was looking at my final training camp of the year. And it looked to me like that moon journey that I'd been setting out on in January of last year was coming to an end. So this past trimester, these past 4 months, was the smoothest leg of the journey for me. I was getting the hang of things. It was my 4th time around. I taught or co-taught 19 classes. 13 of those were computer classes. 6 of those were other classes. I bought 2 new laptops to make sure that leaders in the program, every single leader would have an individual laptop. I added 2 new classes as well, and I got a guest speaker. He came in and taught 2 classes on Excel. I also interviewed 2 ladies to fill a part-time computer teacher position in training camp. This was my first time ever interviewing somebody. It was also my first time leading a new hire. So I learned pretty quickly some lessons in communication. She was reliant on me for her lessons and for her directions each day. At the end of her assignment, when she was done teaching computers, I said goodbye. I thought my lessons in communication there were done. They were not done. Had a one-on-one meeting with Greg. He pulled out the radical candor chart for me, took me through a little lesson. He said, Joel, she's never going to get better at teaching or know how she did at teaching if you don't let her know. So I said, dang it, Greg, you're right. So called Valitha up and we had an exit interview. She provided feedback for me on how the onboarding process was. She also let me know how working under me went. And then I also was able to provide her feedback for how her teaching went. It showed her respect. It was a really simple thing to do, and it was useful for me and useful for her. Something I want to do better this time around in training camp was to gauge the progression of leaders. I read a book back in the spring about adult teaching, and something that stuck out to me was that what you don't measure does not improve. So one of the things I did was I added a mid-training camp computer evaluation to gauge how the leaders were doing at the midway point, suggestions they had for me. I also added a typing test at the end of training camp to gauge the leaders' progress in improving their typing. I felt, looking back, that this was the most prepared leaders were in terms of computer knowledge in leaving at the end of training camp. The ones that were a little less experienced with computers, it seemed like they worked really hard in getting their level of experience up, and I also added more activities and practice exercises for the leaders to learn computer skills. On the personal side of things this trimester, got a haircut. I want to do a better job communicating with my leaders, I want to do a better job communicating with my supporters. So I set out with the goal of communicating with them once a month, and I completed that except for the month of December, which I did not do, unfortunately. I also wanted to be reading more just for fun. Sometime in college, I think I got embarrassed about the fact that I was pretty much just reading Harry Potter. So I set out to read more like adult self-improvement type books. But it's just a chore for me. It doesn't come easily, even though I love reading. So this past trimester, I said, I just want to read more. And so I started reading purely for pleasure. So I finished 6 books, and I really enjoyed doing that. I started 11, but I finished 6. I feel that the area of greatest growth in my personal life since September has been in spiritual growth, and specifically in prayer. There were a few things that came together to cause this. For one thing, Ray preached in a number of different venues and Staff Chapel, ID, Refuge, that you lead out of what you follow after. In the Old Testament, the kings, they would follow after something always. They were either following after the sins of their fathers, or they were following after the gods of other nations, or they're following after, like, say, the example of David and following after the Lord. They had millions of people underneath them. They're kings of nations, but they're following after something. So I realized that I wanted to be leading out of following, and I felt that the way to do that was by spending time more in prayer. At the same time, I was developing a relationship with Pam, my leader, and she was actually discipling me in prayer. She recommended that I read the book, The Practice of the Presence of God. So I was reading that book and putting into practice, trying as best I could to put into practice, spending times throughout the day of praying and just finding joy in being in the Lord's presence. Jumping back into work now, behind the scenes in training camp, I wanted to have more of a greater responsibility and provide greater support in training camp, so I took on more administrative work. I kept track of attendance, infractions, and leader points of all the leaders that were coming through training camp, and I oversaw 4 stipend periods with Amy's help. I also led 6 training camp meetings, and that's a little foreshadowing for what's to come, but I'll get into that in a bit. This training camp, I felt like I was more comfortable than I've been in the past, in front of the classroom and just with the leaders. A couple of examples of this. At one point, William Beatty was playing a game where you have to move ping pong balls from one bowl to the next with a spoon in your mouth. And I cranked up Eye of the Tiger and just started like yelling in his face. There were all the leaders there. He went real fast. The lady from Clayton County came running down and like closed our door on us. There was another point where I was teaching a class on Google Calendar, which is not the most exciting class to teach. It's pretty mundane. But I just remember really enjoying taking the leaders through kind of ridiculous scenarios on how to create calendar events and enjoying it as we were practicing this pretty simple task. And then on the other hand, I saw Jen lead in the mourning and processing of the leader's death. And Terrence, I saw how instead of trampling on ahead, we slowed down, we had time to process, to mourn, to heal together as a class. There was this Friday feedback session I was teaching, and one of the leaders, this is another situation, came out and shared a very personal thing to the group. And I saw as Cassandra and Taylor helped facilitate the group through navigating through this really difficult topic, doing it with gentleness and respect and care. That comfort that I felt in front of the class in this past training camp, and then also the healing that I've seen staff in training camp cultivate, what Father Greg Boyle calls an environment of tenderness and healing, has been preparing me for these upcoming months. I'll be in front of the classroom in training camp far more than I have in the past. In class, there are times to laugh and there are times to cry, and I'll now be leading the group in both of those things and everything in between there. Well, the 4th training camp was coming to an end, and right before landing on the moon and patting myself on the back and saying, "Good job, Joel," I got word that my mission was not over. It was merely being rerouted, this time to Mars. That's Matt Damon from The Martian, if you didn't know. He goes to Mars. I'm hoping to look better than that by the end of it. Several months ago, Juan, Jen, Greg, and I had a meeting on the capstone project for the fellowship. They mentioned the idea of leading training camp. They asked me if it scared me. I said it did. Greg said, good. So suddenly that destination of landing on the moon that I was looking at back in January is not really a destination, it's just a step in the journey. I have more to go on to. So taking on the role of training camp director this upcoming year is my journey to Mars. I'll be teaching or co-leading 35 classes, 15 of which I haven't taught before. I'm excited to be teaching classes that deal less with cold hard machines and more with people's hearts. I'll be teaching computer classes as well, but also getting to step out and have a new direction there. I'll be in charge of scheduling changes in classroom. In the course of a day, a lot can happen. Classes can run late. Maybe a teacher doesn't show up. There's a lot of like gymming and things that have to be switched around, and I'll be in charge of that. Be kept on my toes there. As training camp director, I'll be in charge of classroom management and what Jen calls the temperature of the classroom. With 40 people in a room, all with different backgrounds and experiences, Plenty of turmoil can happen in a day, and I'll be leading the group through bringing calmness and joy and safety to the classroom amidst the turmoil that can happen as we kind of dig into the leaders a little bit. I'll be attending weekly directors meetings, and I'll lead weekly training camp meetings as well. And I've gotten some practice doing this in the past. So I'm stepping into territory that is a bit unfamiliar to me, but I've had good preparation from this past year. And I know that I am following after something, and the Lord has really been kind of developing in me and transforming me through prayer the last 4 months. I also know I won't be a rogue one out there all by myself. Laura mentioned in a training camp session, I think a week ago, that she said, Joel, you're not going to be doing it alone. We'll be there right beside you. That's a simple encouragement, but it means a lot coming from somebody like Laura. And I know not only Laura is with me also, but the training camp staff and all of you as I go on this voyage. Thank you. Questions?
Joel, specifically, what are you most afraid of?
Most afraid of? I think having more things to think about and like balls dropping.